One thing that we have learnt from the audience feedback that we were given is to make sure that the text we used in our trailer was readable. When producing the intertitles in our trailer, we originally used a blood red background with black coloured writing, but after viewing the trailer ourselves, we could barely see what the writing had said. So we brightened up the background to make sure that the text itself was readable to the general public. When it came to the fonts we used, we had to make sure that the fonts we used in the trailer tied in with the ones we used on the magazine cover and on the poster, especially in terms of what colour the font was, making sure that it all tied in with the codes and conventions used in the genre of horror. The font used also crosses over with the whole gangster/horror audience that our group are aiming for, as the font is reminiscent of the font used in the Godfather films, and the fact that the font is also pointed suggests horror, like with the use of pointed blades and all that. The focus group feedback suggested that the titles were too quick, so if we were to improve the trailer, we would have to make sure that the intertitles were on screen long enough for people to read. Otherwise, they would be considered pieces of pointless information. A positive comment that came from the focus group was that the colours and fonts used when creating the intertitles were used rather well and tying with the generic codes and conventions used in horror trailers. The next thing we acknowledged from the feedback was the use of sound within our trailer, more specifically the diegetic and non-diegetic sound used. During the creation of the trailer, everything you hear is non-diegetic, which helped to keep the flow of the trailer going in its entirety. However, with help of feedback, we were given an indication as of where to put some diegetic sound to give the trailer more authenticity. Such places include the foot in the puddle at the beginning of the trailer, when the main character tries to open the door, and when the blade runs against the wall. A positive comment about the sound we used throughout the trailer was that the soundtrack added a realistic factor towards our trailer. Feedback also suggested that greater characterization would have been possible if we had used more scripting and acted lines. This would also be improved if we were to redo the trailer. Characters and acting are big draws for our target audience, and therefore we missed a way to hook them in. On a positive side, the fact that we had no scripting meant that everything seen had a mysterious factor about it, which a member of the focus group said was a rather good thing to do, as scripting could possibly give away the whole story, which is something we didn't want to do. Next, I would like to talk about the lighting we used when filming our trailer. We tried to make sure that the filming used for specific shots was as realistic as possible, which meant using a lot of dark lighting to create a gloomy, mysterious, tension-building atmosphere. The realism was vital for our teenage and young 20s target audience. With horror, the concepts are usually incredible, therefore the settings and mise-en-scène must be credible. Along with this, we had to use a lot of shots that weren't dark at all, and some of the feedback indicated to our group that this didn't add to the realism that the trailer was trying to create by playing on the codes and conventions of horror trailers. More scenes shot in the darkness rather than with sun streaming through windows would have been useful. Some comments were, certain shots are too light at times, and you could have possibly filmed some of the scenes at night to make the film seem more like a horror trailer. This is hugely important, as the genre of the piece is vital to a successful trailer, as it must communicate the genre to the target audience. Otherwise, the target audience will not be hooked. The final point I would like to comment on is the build-up speed used at the beginning of the trailer, from when you first see some tables in a room until you see the intertitles of "He has to admit he brought it on himself." Our group used this as we thought that this tied in with the generic codes and conventions of horror trailers, as they all tend to include a crescendo, close shots of body parts, quick flashes, and more. Most horror trailers tend to use crescendos more often than other techniques to create a build-up of selected parts of the story in the first half of the trailer, which always lead into quick flashes of a few horror scenes towards the end. The feedback we were given indicated to us that the build-up scene we used dragged on too long, but overall was good to use. Once again, the fact that we used the crescendo was vital to the realism factor we were trying to create, as without it, our trailer might not have been classed as a horror trailer. In conclusion, I believe that all the audience feedback our group were given taught us to make sure that we stick to the generic codes and conventions of horror trailers, because as much as our trailer does this half the time, it doesn't follow them all the time, which if it did, would have added to the realism factor that our group was trying to aim for when creating the trailer, and would have drawn in more of our target audience. This could have been done by adding some diegetic sound, some darker shots, or by having a shorter build-up at the beginning of the trailer, and a lot more fast-paced horror scenes towards the end.